Another one bites the dust. Just like starting over.
From the silky groove of Michael Jackson's Rock With You to the neon rush of Blondie's Call Me 1980 kicked off a new decade with soundtracks built to last. Some came from legends, others arrived and vanished just as fast. But each one took a turn at the very top of the Billboard Hot 100. This is every #1 Billboard song from 1980. Rock With You, Michael Jackson. This was warmth turned into music. Rock With You glided across the radio with a voice that felt effortless. Michael Jackson delivered every note with polish, charm, and precision. It was not flashy, it was smooth, and it set the tone for the decade that followed. The track spent 4 weeks at #1 and was released under Epic Records. It confirmed what Off the Wall had already hinted at. Jackson was no longer a rising star. He was the center of the universe. But as his rhythm faded out, another voice came in, softer and sweeter, asking for just one more try. Do That to Me. One more time, Captain and Tennille. A soft piano, a light melody, and a whispered request. Do That to Me. One More Time was not trying to compete with anyone. It just sat still and hoped you would listen.
Tell it to me once again.
It reached #1 for 1 week and was released by Casablanca Records. It became the duo's second and final chart-topping hit. After years of playful love songs, this one landed differently. It felt honest, and that was enough. Next came a shift. Guitars got louder, the tempo picked up, and a British band took over the charts with a flash of rockabilly swagger. Crazy Little Thing Called Love, Queen. Before Queen went full stadium rock with anthems like We Will Rock You, they paused to channel Elvis. Crazy Little Thing Called Love was a tribute to vintage sound and simple rhythms. Freddie Mercury sang it with a wink and a strut, and somehow it worked perfectly. Released under Elektra Records, it stayed at #1 for 4 weeks. It showed Queen could move between genres without losing themselves. A rock band playing it cool in leather jackets, just for fun, and still owning the top spot. When Queen stepped off the stage, another rock giant followed. Only this time the message was much heavier. Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, Pink Floyd. This was rebellion in 3 minutes. Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 was cold, hypnotic, and full of quiet rage. The robotic beat, the kids' chorus, the controlled guitar line, it all added up to a protest song that somehow became a massive hit. It held #1 for 4 weeks and was released under Columbia Records. For a band that never aimed for the charts, this was their only #1 single in the United States, and it happened without compromising anything. After the wall came down, things got brighter. A blonde punk singer stepped in with fire in her voice and 6 weeks on the throne. Call Me Blondie. Call Me was built for movement, for clubs, for radios, for people in fast cars and faster conversations. Blondie mixed punk attitude with disco beat, and the result was something that sounded completely new. Deborah Harry didn't ask for your attention, she already had it. Released by Chrysalis Records, the song stayed at #1 for 6 weeks and was the longest-running chart topper of the year, which cemented Blondie's role as the face of genre bending cool. Once the phone stopped ringing, the dance floor stayed open. The sound just got funkier. Funkytown, Lips Inc. Funkytown did not need much explanation. Its title told you everything. The beat was mechanical, the synths were sharp, and the groove was non-stop. Lips Inc. dropped one of the year's most iconic dance tracks and then disappeared. It held the #1 spot for 4 weeks after it was released through Casablanca Records. The song became a defining hit of the early 1980s and one of the last gasps of pure disco before the sound faded from the charts. From disco flash to arena royalty, the next track was recorded live and still made its way to #1. Coming up live at Glasgow, Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney had nothing to prove, but with Coming Up, he still pushed forward. The studio version was odd and playful, but it was the live version recorded in Glasgow that caught fire. It had energy, grit, and a pulse that made it stand out. It reached #1 for 3 weeks when it was released under Columbia Records. The single showed that even after the Beatles, McCartney could still make hits sound brand new. And then the energy changed again, from legacy artist to hometown rebel. It's still rock and roll to me, Billy Joel. Billy Joel was watching trends change around him, and he had something to say about it. It's Still Rock and Roll to Me was part commentary, part anthem, and completely unforgettable. It spent 2 weeks at #1 and was released by Columbia Records. The song captured a moment when rock music was morphing fast. Joel planted his feet and reminded everyone he didn't need a new sound to stay relevant. Next came a song that felt like it floated in from somewhere magical, light, airy, and endlessly charming. Magic, Olivia Newton-John.
Have to believe we are magic.
This was shimmer turned into song. Magic was soft, sweet, and impossible to resist. Olivia Newton-John sang every line with a calm that made the whole thing feel like a dream. It was not big, it was not loud, but it lasted.
Nothing can stand in our way.
The track stayed at #1 for 4 weeks after it was released under MCA Records. It became one of her signature hits and served as a highlight from the Xanadu soundtrack. Whatever the movie lacked, the music delivered. And then, the winds changed again. Smooth Sailing entered the charts and stayed just long enough to make an impact. Sailing, Christopher Cross. Sailing was soft rock at its calmest, full of space and smoothness. Christopher Cross sang as if nothing could shake him. The lyrics promised escape, and the music delivered exactly that. Released by Warner Bros. Records, it spent 1 week at #1. The track became the signature hit of Christopher Cross's career and helped define what adult contemporary would sound like for years to come. It drifted in, made its mark, and left everything a little quieter behind it. Then the calm gave way to something sharp, a return to rhythm, control, and a queen at the center of it all. Upside Down, Diana Ross.
Upside down, boy, you turn me.
Diana Ross flipped the room upside down with this one. Funky bass, clean beats, and vocals that danced across the rhythm without ever losing control. Produced by Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards of Chic, Upside Down had disco's groove but pop's precision.
Inside out and round and round.
The song stayed at #1 for 4 weeks when it was released through Motown Records. It marked a bold evolution in Ross's sound and became one of the most successful singles of her career. The message was confident. The delivery was flawless. Then came a thud, a stomp, a bass line that could not be denied, and a second strike from a band that had already proved they could own the charts. Another One Bites the Dust, Queen.
Another one bites the dust.
This was Queen at their most dangerous. Another One Bites the Dust turned everything sideways. A funk-inspired groove, a bass line built to knock, and Freddie Mercury's voice holding it all together like a smirk. There was no guitar solo, just pulse and threat.
And another one gone, and another one gone. Another one bites the dust. Hey.
It held the #1 spot for 3 weeks and was released by Elektra Records. The song crossed over to R&B and disco charts, giving Queen a reach that extended far beyond rock. It became one of their biggest hits worldwide and proved they could win on any stage. And then a different kind of voice arrived. Softer, classical, emotional, a woman singing straight from the heart. Woman in Love, Barbra Streisand. This was not just a love song, it was a declaration. Woman in Love had sweeping strings, big choruses, and the unmistakable voice of Barbra Streisand pouring emotion into every line. It felt like the closing scene of a romantic epic. The track spent 3 weeks at number 1 and was released under Columbia Records. It became one of Streisand's most successful singles and one of the most recognizable ballads of the decade. The lyrics were dramatic, the performance was huge, and it landed exactly where it aimed. After the storm of strings and emotion, the next voice came with quiet strength, a slow burn that climbed to the top and stayed there longer than almost anyone expected. Lady, Kenny Rogers.
Lady, for so many.
Lady was built on patience, a simple piano, a voice filled with gravel and tenderness, and lyrics that sounded like they were written in a letter, not a studio. Kenny Rogers teamed up with Lionel Richie for this one, and the result was something timeless. It stayed at number 1 for 6 weeks and was released by Liberty Records. It became one of the most played ballads of the year and proved that country, when done right, could speak to everyone. Rogers did not raise his voice. He did not need to. One final song would arrive before the year turned. It would blend pop structure with spiritual promise, and it would end the year on a note of sincerity, just like Starting Over, John Lennon.
Just like starting over.
This song carried more than melody. It carried weight, just like Starting Over was light on the surface, a retro throwback to 1950s pop, full of hope and renewal. But underneath it all was something heavier. John Lennon's return to music after 5 years of silence made the song feel like a personal restart. And then, weeks after its release, tragedy changed everything. It reached number 1 and stayed there for 5 weeks. Released by Geffen Records, it became Lennon's biggest solo hit and his final one while alive. After his death, the song's optimism turned bittersweet. It was no longer just a comeback, it became a farewell that no one saw coming. And that was the full lineup. 15 tracks, 15 moments, each one hitting number 1 and leaving its stamp on a brand new decade. Which one still plays in your head when no one's around? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more chart-topping throwbacks, like and subscribe. We're just getting started.